just when you thought it was safe to go onto iTunes. This is Next Level Guy, the only website that makes self-development as fun as going to the movies. It's time to take the red pill and escape the Matrix.
What's happening, guys? It's time for another episode of the Next Level Guy Show podcast with your favourite tutor, Ian Dawson-Mackay. Next Level Guy is the go-to men's interview, interest and improvement website where I quiz the experts to find out the hacks, tips, methods and protocols that you can implement in your own life to take it to the next level and live happier, healthier, wealthier, sexier and so much more. Today's guest is former FBI negotiator Chris Voss. Chris has over 24 years of FBI experience and was a former FBI lead international kidnapping negotiator. He's also the author of the amazing negotiation bestseller, Never Split the Difference. In this interview, we discuss his story, negotiation, communication methods, and what is said versus what can actually be understood, red flags to watch out for, how to bond with those you communicate with, how to negotiate more effectively, and so much more. I learned so much about communication from this interview, and this is really only about 10% of the gems in his book, so I suggest you also get a copy today. Now let's get to the interview. Hope you enjoy. So thank you so much for doing this, Chris. I really appreciate it. Loving your material. I even bought it on Kindle rather than getting a free copy. That's how much I love it as an interview. So for those people who don't know who you are, and you met them in a cliche social setting, how do you explain what you've done? Because you've had some career and it just gets better and better.
Yeah, well, I'm a retired FBI hostage negotiator. I was the FBI's lead international kidnapping negotiator. And then I turned around and started teaching hostage negotiation as a business negotiation tool, first at Harvard, then at Georgetown and USC. And we put out a book that's been killing it ever since it came out. I told somebody today it was number 15 overall on the most read, most sold on Amazon. And they said, 15 in the business category. And I said, no, 15 overall for everything, most read, most sold category. Yeah, so the book's done well. It's resonated with people because it's easy to get the concepts and apply them. And it applies in every aspect of your life.
Definitely, because that's what I noticed in the book when I first thought, it's a negotiation book. It'll be stuffy, it'll be boring, it'll be on about like statistical analysis and stuff. But the concept in the books are really sort of easy to get into and understand and apply. But I'm interested, like, I've read before about, that you were about the SWOT and the tactic, you wanted to learn about negotiations instead of doing the SWOT because of the impact it was having on your body. But where does it come from before then? Were you sort of very language-based as a child? Did you like playing board games like Scrabble and these sort of things? Was there a point that you can remember that really got you into dealing with people, negotiating, how words and vocal communications affect us and how we act?
Well, I always wanted to learn better ways to do things. And so if you could describe something to somebody to get a situation over with, like I remember when I was a cop, if I would show up and there would be a problem and the police be talking to the citizens and it wouldn't be going that well, they wouldn't disperse. If I could whisper something in somebody's ear, would they leave? I remember walking onto the scene of a domestic disturbance. This guy's bent out of shape at how he's being treated. The police are trying to get him to leave. And he just feels wronged. And he's getting ready to go to jail only because he won't leave. And I remember I whispered in his buddy's ear and I said, you guys are good if you just get out of here. If you let your buddy still continue to argue with my other police officers that are here, they're going to take him to jail. And the realization comes over his face and he whispers in his buddy's ear and then he grabs his buddy by the arm and just drags him out. And then the other police officers looked at me with what did you say to that guy to get him to drag his friend out? So, how can you solve situations more quickly is something that I've always kind of been.
I love that kind of approach because there's things you mentioned in the book that when you brought it up, you notice more and more the use of personal pronouns, the way that we kind of address each other, like the cognitive biases that we have. Things that we don't even really understand, but once you identify it, it's very hard not to see it. And, is there a
Right.
universal sort of list of things that would make anybody listening right now a better negotiator, or is it dependent on the situation, the people, the emotional connection between people? How, your principles, do they work for everybody, or is there a kind of limit depending on who's involved, the nature, that sort of thing?
Yeah, and that's a great question because every hostage negotiation team in the world uses the same basic 8 skills. So how do you approach people on a human nature level? Because they're using skills that work on human beings, not because they're Africans, not because they're Latins, not because they're Asians, not because they're Western Europeans. It works because they're people. That's why every hostage negotiation team uses the same skills. So yeah, to start with, first of all, we're all the idea that we're all wired kind of the same, and you want to respect other people's culture, but most of the time, people, how do I deal with the Chinese? Do I gotta bow? Do I gotta drink tea? Do I gotta bring them a present? What do I gotta do? Well, that's all surface stuff. Let's go at people on a human nature basis. And the ridiculous thing is, every human being really likes being heard. So you'll actually gain the upper hand in a negotiation and getting what you want by making the other side feel like they at least got a chance to make their case. And then that doesn't matter where you are. Everybody wants to be heard. And there are actually tremendous bargaining advantages to be gained from that. So that's one of the silly things right off the bat, works in every single culture.
Because that's the thing that I've really liked about your material, is that it can be applied for everybody. You read some of these books and they'll say, this is the key concepts, and you think, yeah, that's fine if you're in that situation with those kind of people. You're at that sort of level, and your stuff could be immediately applied and it could fix negotiations. Now, I particularly like the bit about where you explain to people how negotiations affect every aspect of our lives, because too many people think it's just the boardroom business, the stuffy kind of approach. But you're talking about like negotiating with your child for them to go to bed, with your girlfriend, with your friends, with your guys you work with. Have you found anybody that this doesn't work with? Is there anybody that's kind of been the exception to the rule?
No, and it almost sounds like I'm saying it in jest, but in point of fact, the only people it doesn't work with are people who there's actually something fundamentally dysfunctional in their brain. Now, we joke a lot about people acting like they're dysfunctional, but really, the only people that it doesn't work with are paranoid schizophrenics. I mean, unless there's something actually wrong with their wiring, for lack of a better term, unless they're actually hallucinating, unless they're actually hearing voices. Everybody else has basic human nature wiring. Even if your chemical balances are off, there's some psychological disorders where it's not a wiring issue, it's a chemical balance issue. What they call bipolar or manic depressive, or whatever the version is this year when they revise that book. That's primarily a chemical balance. It's not a wiring balance. So, anybody who's got wiring that's functioning, you can figure out how that wiring works, and you can use this with them.
So I love that. These are the kind of skills I love sort of emphasizing on the show. It's ones that anybody can adapt and immediately go into things. So I don't know if you would agree with me, but something I used to always love saying was, if I was to pick up an employee, I would pick the person that had good people skills, but didn't know the system, over the person who knew the
Right.
system, but wasn't good with people, because people skills are really hard to teach, where anybody can learn a system. Would you agree with that kind of philosophy? Can anybody get better?
Well, there's a factor called openness. Now, you can get better if you're open to learning, if you're coachable, or if you work hard. You only need one of the two of those. Now, if you work really hard, you're going to put in the time, you're going to get there. It's going to take you longer, but you're going to get there. I like to think that I'm more coachable. I'm pretty darn hard working, but I like to think that I'm more coachable, and that's my advantage. So if you're either coachable, if you're hardworking, or ideally both, you're going to get there.
So something I loved in your book was the the idea of mirroring, labeling, that sort of thing. Now, when people are initially trying to get better in negotiations, what kind of things would you do working with a client? Do you have like a sort of mental checklist that you get them to do, or do they have to kind of say, if they do this, you do X, or do you go with them and say that if this arises, this is the protocols to go into? How do you start working with somebody to get better negotiations? So say they've read the book and they think, oh, brilliant. How can they start putting into practice? What's a kind of 3-step checkpoint or 6-step checkpoint they can do for the next day they're trying to negotiate?
Well, other than once you learn the basic skills, and the skills are simple. I mean, they're simple as hell. You're talking about labels. You're talking about mirrors. Nothing could be simpler. You just got to put in your time in your low stakes conversations, like the guy at the coffee shop, the guy who's driving you in a cab, your Uber driver, your Lyft driver, the person at the grocery store, and then the biggest strategic advantage, but people push back on the most, is instead of pitching gain, disarming problems, disarming negatives. I'm at a grocery store earlier today. I'm looking for special treatment in a grocery store. I'm going to go to a part of the grocery store where people can't answer my question, but it's not their job and they're doing something else. So you do what we would refer to as a cold read. This person's annoyed. They don't want to be bothered by me. I'm annoying them by simply walking up to them because, I want to ask their help, and it's not part of the job. So, I could say, hey, do you want to make a customer happy? Any one of these really stupid, yes-oriented questions that are also self-entitled that just make people roll their eyes. But my negotiation here now is getting a piece of information and maybe some effort out of somebody when I am someone they're actively trying to avoid. So what's the reaction going to be? It's going to be negative. How do I do that? I call it out in advance and assess it. So I walk up to this person behind the counter and I go like, look, I'm getting ready to make your day extremely difficult. So what's a predictable reaction? They're going like, oh God, what's this guy want? It's something horrible. And I say, look, I'm sorry. I'm looking for some of the organic chickens. You're going to have any coming out pretty soon? This lady perks right up because I took her to what we refer to as an emotional anchor. And now what I'm asking is a relief. So she, let me check. She goes and she checks. She says, no, they're not ready. They're going to be ready in about 10 minutes. She says, if you want, I'll go get one for you and hold it off to the side. Now, real negotiations are about people's time. Now I'm getting this woman's most valuable commodity, her time, and every single thing she's doing, she's volunteering to do. So I didn't have to ask for it, which means I don't owe her a thing other than my appreciation. It was her idea, so she's going to do it. And on top of that, she actually felt pretty good about it. And it's a relief because my initial emotion shift that I gave her made it sound like, God knows what went through her mind. But she was delighted to do something for me that wasn't part of her job. Most dangerous negotiation is the one you don't know you're in. I saved myself at least 2 trips to the grocery store. On top of that, I'm getting some practice in. This is a low stakes practice. I love the phrase, I'm getting ready to make your day much more difficult, because it stops people in their tracks. It scares them to death. And then 9 times out of 10, you get exactly what you want because what you asked for was a relief, and they're delighted to do it.
So I love the way, when I was reading the book, it just made perfect sense. The way you broke it down, especially about the ways that are the other person affected by like cognitive biasm, their own sort of like input into the interaction, how they interpret your behavior leading up to it, and that sort of thing. So how should we overcome our logical brains and snap into that? I think you call it tactical empathy in the book. How can we be different to the guy that's just coming to being an arsehole? how can we make sure that the person we're interacting with isn't going to just snap back at us? Is there a way that you kind of like a mantra you say to yourself, or how do you remember or build? Is it just practice, or is there a way around that?
Yeah, it's just practice, but let me break down what the practice looks like. Because there's an awkwardness phase here. There's two things that happen to us when we get ready to try this. We feel awkward, and we start to defeat ourselves, and our brain defeats ourselves in advance. So if you just decide, I'm just going to have a little bit of fun with this. I really don't care what happens. You've now instantly transformed your ability to learn and actually your willingness to execute. Because it's you getting in your way. And until you know that this stuff works, you're going to beat yourself every time. I mean, I was coaching some real estate people the other day. We had a special intensive 2-day real estate negotiation training. And we brought this one issue up. And they said, they're never going to do that. If we ask for that, I'm not even asking for it. So, they're not going to do it. And I said, nice job. You did their work for them. You beat yourself before you even got to the table. They don't have to be a good negotiator. You're going to talk yourself out of 9 out of 10 things before you even get to the table. But you get to the willingness to go to the table with this stuff in high stakes when you practice with your Starbucks person, your coffee person, your waiter, your waitress, the person behind the counter at the deli. I may add that they had a machine for taking numbers, serving at the deli, and I walked right by it, and I know they saw that I didn't pull a number off of this thing. And they're thinking, oh, God, here comes another self-entitled customer. He thinks he's too good to take a number. He won't stand in line like everybody else. He's going to make my day infinitely worse. I know that's what they're thinking. And I also know the power of calling out negatives in advance. You don't got to be a genius to think that what the person is going to think. You know what they think. It's just getting used to the fact of calling it out in advance makes it go away.
I'm just thinking, sorry, I was lost in the thought there because I was thinking the number of times that my pre-programming would have lost me the sale or lost me the ability to do something. And it's kind of scary when you think about it, how we can be our own worst enemy in that situation.
I tell you, we absolutely are. I mean, we beat ourselves up so bad and getting to the point where, where we want perfection, and we know perfection is not there. The crazy thing about the unknown is we also know we don't have perfection now, but we have predictable responses, and it's not failure that scares us; it's the unknown that scares us.
So, if we were approaching a situation, how do we cancel our cognitive biasm? How do we accept, how do we switch this off? Because we kind of go into autopilot and look at the guy in the shirt is probably going to be more professional than the guy that's sitting there in the tracksuit bottoms, but the guy in the shirt could be going off to court or something like that. How do we practice this and remove the fundamental barriers that you mentioned in the book, that makes us better negotiators? Because a lot of what you said is fantastic, but I just know that there's people sitting and reading it going, oh no, I could never do that. Oh, I know I could never do that. How do they get rid of that BS? Because some of your students had amazing results in such little time, but how do you break down that barrier at the start just to get people's head and mindset into this, that they can be a fantastic negotiator?
Well, there are about 3 different ways you can trick yourself into a positive mindset. Now, the positive mindset actually makes you smarter. There's smaller. Yeah, don't make it smaller. It makes you smarter. Sean Acker did this phenomenal TED Talk called The Happiness Advantage. He's a Harvard psychologist. His TED Talk is one of the funniest ones you'll ever hear.
I think
and he throws out. I bet you have, because it's one of the biggest ones out there. He throws out in the middle of it the stat that you're 31% smarter in a positive frame of mind. Now, that's not my stat, that's Sean's stat. He's a Harvard psychologist. He's done the research. I'm satisfied with my source. So if you trick yourself into a positive frame of mind, you're more likely you're going to succeed. Now, what are those positive frames of mind? One of the following is probably going to suit you. You could say, you know what, I'm just going to play a game with this. I'm just going to make this a game. I don't care if I win or if I lose. I'm just going to do it for the fun of it. You could put yourself in a positive mindset that way. A real common mindset is gratitude. It's such a common mindset, it's almost a cliche. But if you say, and I said this to myself one time when I was in a negative frame of mind, I said, you know what, I'm lucky to be in this situation anyway. The only reason I'm here is because I'm successful. So actually the fact that I'm struggling with this problem is a success problem. I'm grateful for it. Positive frame of mind, gratitude. You're smarter, you're more capable. The other one that's really interesting is like if you're curious, if you just, I wonder if this works. I'm genuinely curious to see what would happen here. I think I first started getting onto the curiosity mindset. Another couple of friends of mine wrote a great book called Difficult Conversations. Sheila Heen and Doug Stone. Bruce Patton, I think, is a third guy, but it's mostly Sheila and Doug. And they talk about the curiosity mindset. Well, if you're genuinely curious, you're in a positive, hey, this could be interesting. To be actually interested, be fascinated by it. It's a positive mindset, and it also increases the likelihood that you'll execute.
There's something, while I was reading your book that really sort of popped in was, I'm trying to think who said it, but it was on about the notion that we are our own worst enemy, that, we'll have talked ourselves out of it, that our mindset will be negative, and you'll immediately go, no. And the biggest enemy is the one between your ears.
Yeah.
So I love the things you were talking about, like the accusation audit and overcoming the bias and stuff like that. So now we've got somebody listening, they're thinking, you know what, I can do this. Now I can see negotiations in my life that I could make better. I could get a pay rise. I could get my daughter to stay in her bed after she goes to bed. I can be a better partner. I can better connection with friends and stuff like that. Now, you list a number of amazing techniques and stuff, but how do we overcome that initial thing that a lot of people struggle with, when they're dealing with negotiations, that the people are, how do I say this nicely? They can start going mental, it's the emotions start running, and then it goes tit for tat, that, you said this and you said that, and then they fight you back on it. How can we make sure that we overcome, that side of things, remove emotions? Or are emotions always in a negotiation? You just need to learn to play them intelligently. Can it ever just become emotionless?
Well, it's not that emotions are bad, it's that negative emotions are bad. And, we sort of broad brush this idea when we say to somebody, hey, look, you're being emotional. The emotions we're talking about is they're angry, they're sad, it's some version of anger. So the broad brush term for emotions really is pointed at negative emotions. Negative emotions constrict our thinking. There's an old saying, if you give a speech while you're angry, it'll be the greatest speech you ever regret. So your thinking is constricted with negative emotions, fear, anger. They're all a version of fear, jealousy, concern, whatever it is. They actually constrict our brain's ability to work. And the flip side of it is positive emotions, again, expand our mental capacity. So it's negative emotions that are our problem, and where we really draw the line, because when the moment that your emotions are no longer intertwined in your thinking is when you're dead. Neuroscience shows us that every single thought we have either starts in the emotional aspects of the brain or goes through the emotional aspect of the brain while the brain processes it. So it's actually not physically possible to have decisions that don't have an emotional component.
Because that's good, because the number of arguments I think I've lost with ex-partners where you've said, oh, you're just being emotional. And you're thinking, well, yeah, I kind of have to be. If I've not got up and downs, I'm dead. It's...
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with somebody,
what are key language points that you look for? I love the story in the book about the bank robbery where you noticed the overuse of like personal pronouns, for example. Do you find yourself automatically looking for these kind of things? Are there indicator like red flags in the way somebody speaks that you particularly look for that says that they're leading towards A, so I need to do protocol B? I know it's now become to a point where it's probably automatic for you, but what are the sort of things that somebody new to becoming a better negotiator, this sort of thing, better interactions can look for? Is it the fact that they use I rather than, keeping it non-personated, or what's the sort of things we should look out for as a warning in a negotiation?
Well, yeah, what are the red flags to let me know right away that I got a problem child on the other side of the table, right? So, yeah, the personal pronouns early on, what's the difference there? If you get somebody who's in love with singular pronouns, I, me, my, this person is going to overstate their influence on their side, and they have little or no influence whatsoever. So now that helps. That person is still a conduit for information to the real thinkers on the other side. But your main job is to plant ideas with them in a really deferential, gentle way, so that they take those ideas and they repeat them to the other side. The other thing that I look for early on, if someone I figure that someone I should have my guard up against, and it's going to sound crazy, but if they start talking about win-win right off the bat, I mean within the first 3 to 5 minutes, if it feels like they have brought up win-win before we even get anywhere in this at all, they're trying to rip me off. Their version of win-win is that they win everything. They don't want to pay me a dime for anything. And win-win is supposed to have been the spirit of collaborative negotiation. That's its stereotype. And enough people get overly compliant in the win-win mindset that the cutthroat negotiators have learned, hey, let me throw out this word win-win, and if they bite on it really hard, I can pick their pocket. And so that's something. If somebody calls my company and says, hey, we're going to bring you in for training, we got a win-win opportunity here for you. I'm like, all right, fine, you're trying to cheat me. And then they'll probably go to describe what a wonderful opportunity it is. I get an email from a guy about a month and a half ago. He says, hey, man, how would you like to come and speak to a bunch of billionaire investors? I'm like, all right, let's see where this is going. I'll bet money this guy doesn't want to pay me a dime. And sure enough, he's selling the opportunity so hard that from his perspective, I should be just glad to be there at all, and I shouldn't charge him anything, because the follow-on opportunity, the mystical hope-based strategy, so much business to be had. And I played it out with this guy a little bit, and sure enough, they didn't even offer me. They offered me 5% of my normal fee.
That's nice of them.
Yeah, and he thought he was being generous. He said, well, you're going to be in Las Vegas anyway, and so it's not going to cost you to get it. It's not going to cost you to be here anyway, and you just stop by, on your way to the airport from the hotel, so you're not going to need any hotel money. And since you're stopping by on your way from the airport to the hotel, you're not going to need money for food. You're not going to need money for this. Not going to need money for that. So, be worth it to you, because otherwise you wouldn't get anything. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. All right. I saw this coming a long ways away. So when up front they're selling you on what a great opportunity it is, I'm here to tell you they don't want to pay you a dime.
Because that's what I love about the book, was how you explained about why people are angry, and how the way you can deal with them, that you could address them, that took the emotion out of it, but you kind of built a connection with them, that people that were inherently looking for connection, and you explained about how you could let them fill the silence by asking open-ended questions and things like that. But when you look at it now, do you have to change your approach if it's a single person, if it's a group, if it's a presentation, if it's online, if it's offline? Does this change at all? Because surely communication is communication regardless of the nature of it. Or, do people put on different levels of show depending on who's in the room that you have to watch for? Or, is it the usual adage that, the loudest person in the room is the weakest person?
Well, yeah, the people that are hanging back, the people that are being real quiet, they're the ones that are soaking up the information. Those are the people that you want to get to. Absolutely. They're always the most influential people in the room are always the quietest. Because they know they're influential and they're trying to stay back. They're not trying to prove nothing to anybody. So, yeah. But then, the question, are you addressing a group or are you addressing an individual? One of our beliefs is that one of our laws of gravity, if you will, where that we believe it's the case, is there's always a team on the other side. The other side always has a buying committee. The other side always has people that they talk to who will kill your deal. They may love what you have. You may have a great opportunity. You may have a great relationship with the person you're talking to. But there's deal killers on the other side. There's girlfriends. There's wives. There's brothers-in-law. If it's a personal decision, there are people there that'll kill that deal. If it's a business decision, there are people that are going to be affected by the contract. They're going to be affected by the implementation. So you're much better off if you live by the rule. There's always a team on the other side. There's always a number of people who can not just make the decision, but kill it. So if I got a bunch of them in a room, or if I only got one of them in the room, I need to worry about the dynamics of all of them. And that sounds like a lot of extra work, but then you got to ask yourself, how much work is it when you put in time to get the deal and then the deal gets destroyed by somebody who wasn't even there? That's the real waste of time. And so the stitch in time, so to speak, is to start to take these people into account from the very beginning. Your overall commitment to the deal is less, and you don't lose deals.
See, that was what really scared me when I was reading the book, was how you mentioned, that you could have somebody that's overselling and, you're they're not giving you too many red flags, but you think you're doing well with the negotiation and that they don't have that level of responsibility in their business, or they're maybe not selling it correctly. And these people are going to come in and just kill it. So how can you plan around this? You mentioned a couple of strategies in your book about some questions or prompts that you could ask to the person to make sure that what you're negotiating is going to be suitable. Could you go into a wee bit, is it a sample way? Because I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah. No, you design your way in there with how questions and what questions. Or, how do the people who are going to be affected by this contract, how do they react? What do they think about this? How did this break down last time? Who's going to want to put in their 2 cents or maybe undermine you after you get a signature? You start asking, what you do is you really shift out of getting yes and get into implementation. We like to say yes is nothing without how. You start getting into how, and how do the people who are going to be affected, how do they react to this? Then you begin to solve a lot of those problems, because then your point of contact, who may be what some people refer to as a blocker or a fake decision maker, they're actually a really rich source of information. They know what's going on their side of the table. They know how this stuff is broken down in the past. They know what makes people mad. They know who's a tough sell. They're a rich source of information. Even though they might not be an influencer, they can tell you a lot. So respect that person. Start broadening your application of what you're trying to accomplish. What you're really trying to accomplish is implementation. Then things start to change and you run into fewer implementation problems. You make money.
Well, I hope you're all enjoying this interview so far. I just wanted to give you a quick break just now and let you know about my affiliate schemes and products that are currently on the market. If you go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates, that's nextlevelguy.com/affiliates, or if you're on the site, go to the affiliates deals link in the banner at the top page, and that's in the blue ribbon. You can find out about some of the awesome deals, special offers, and listener exclusives I've set up with some amazing companies. There are special offers, listener deals, and discount codes available here. I'm always updating it. The companies include things like Amazon, Under Armour. There's Gains Books. Then there's some more XXX stuff, shall we say. There's some supplement companies. There's some clothing companies. There's some ones there if you want to get better with women, if you want to learn to cook better, if you want to do anything better. There's something there for everybody. Get a gift for yourself, get a gift for somebody that you're trying to get into their life, get a gift for somebody like a family member, get a gift for a holiday. Really, there's something there for everybody. Use it and abuse it. I don't get any information on you, what you purchase, etc. All I get is a small commission from the company for you using my links. So again, go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates or click on the affiliates deals banner and enjoy. Now let's get back to the interview. Enough waffle from me.
Yeah, it's amazing just like how the hardest thing that most people think is, I've got to get that contract right. I've got to make sure it's signed and triplicated. I've got to make sure the documents are in order. And there's so much around just how you speak to somebody, how you deal with them, what they're saying, how they're saying it, that we don't even take into granted. And it's amazing communication. And it blew me away when you were talking about in the book about like the bank robbery, how the old style of policing, was just to give orders, where you started that kind of way of dealing with people on an emotional basis. Why is this not taught, do you think, in like public schools and stuff like that? Is it too difficult for younger people to sort of comprehend? Do you have to get a bit of life experience before you truly understand this kind of negotiation? Or, why is it not a kind of the prime method that a lot of like younger people are taught? Because surely it would change their lives.
It's nuts. It's nuts. I don't know if it's because it's hard to quantify, in real hard numbers. Like not just in junior high, basic education, whatever country you're in, they're kind of different, sort of split out in different levels in the US and the UK. But like in a business school, I haven't seen a business school yet where negotiation was a required class. It's optional in every business school that I've seen. Now that's insane. How do they justify that? How do they think about that? But we got educational systems that are set up around, certain academic credentials, academic criteria. And then the problem is once that system is set up like that, we're asking people who don't have the power to change how they're compensated to change what they're doing. Like our academics are, they're not compensated on how effective people actually are. They're compensated on, did the person that came through the door meet the criteria that we set up? But did we prove that the criteria that we set up actually correlates with real world performance? That's that last step there that we haven't proven. So nobody teaches negotiation. Nobody makes it a required part of their curriculum.
Because your book is mind blowing when you look at it. Because when you break down your own sort of personal bullshit in your brain that says, "Oh, I don't negotiate," and you look at like you do if you have a wife, a kid, with the guy in the coffee shop, the guy in the bus taking your ticket. There's thousands of interactions and negotiations we go through in our daily lives. So something that I really loved was the concept of mirroring, like how a simple. Like, so I was always brought up to treat the guy sweeping the floor the same as the CEO, and always just be nice to the person because it's a person at the end of the day. Too many people will phone like the bank and they'll give the person on the phone a complete bollocking because something happened in their account and they don't need to see the person, they don't need to deal with them. Whereas to me, I know what it's like to be on the other end. So you show empathy and you chat away. And what I loved was the way you explained mirroring. Could you go into a wee bit about how they can use mirroring to not their advantage, because that sounds a bit, but how can we become better negotiators, communicators by using the concept of mirroring?
Yeah, the mirroring is one of the great skills. It's super simple, and it's so simple and easy. People don't believe it could work, and it's a hostage negotiator's mirror, business negotiator's mirror is not the body language mirror. You're not trying to, if the guy puts his right hand to his chin, you don't put your right hand to your chin. Mirroring, short, sweet definition, repeating the last 1 to 3 words of what someone has just said. Just repeating the last 1 to 3 words of what they just said. And then when you get really good and you understand and you can pull that off at any time, then you can pick out a selected 1 to 3 words from anywhere in a conversation. But it's so simple, it keeps people talking. And it gets them to reword what they just said. And also it's so simple, you can, if you built the skill, you can use it when somebody said something that's just blown your mind. Like what they just said just makes no sense. And your brain is going like, this does not compute. This does not compute. And I got a video on our YouTube channel. YouTube channel, if I may, is the Black Swan Group's YouTube channel. And one of our videos that I put up is mirroring. And I mirror with a bank robber. And I find out about, he inadvertently says something about his getaway driver who's not there. And we don't even know he's got a getaway driver at the time. I'm asking about his van. And he says, hey, you chased my driver away. And I was shocked that he said that. Like, I don't know anything about a driver. I'm like, this does not compute. I don't understand. It so caught me off guard. And so, but I had the mirroring skill. What do I do? When my brain is just shut down on me and I'm shocked, I go, we chased your driver away? He goes, yeah, when he saw the police, he cut and run. I mean, I've got this actual recording from the actual hostage negotiation from the book. It's at the Chase Manhattan Bank. I pulled this snippet out. I put it up on our YouTube channel in a video. Like, we didn't even know there was a bank robber at that time. And that one statement is what ended up causing the getaway driver to get arrested, and he had to plead because that tied him. Finally, we had something that tied him to the bank robbery. I just said it because my brain had shut down. The mirror is such a great skill. And when you mirror, the other side's going to say stuff they probably wouldn't say otherwise. And that's exactly what this bank robber said.
Yeah, I loved it when I read it because I noticed like that a lot of the interviews that you were doing when the book first came out, people were amazed at like just how the open-ended questions were, could do this, could do that. But I was blown away by the way you can't talk about the concept of labeling, about mirroring, etc. Because I was into pickup when I was a bit younger, and the whole dating mirroring thing about how you move your hand to mirror how she's got her hand, or you sit in a certain, and I thought, oh no, here we go. But I love that concept because you almost invite that person to go further and to explain. It's like, if you stay silent and the person who speaks next is the weaker one because they need to fill that space. They feel uncomfortable that there is no communication going on. So you mentioned about the voice and things like that. So when you're dealing with somebody that is on the phone, or like you're dealing with a bank, where it's like you're 100 yards across the road, what are you listening from the voice? You mentioned there's 3 kinds of voice. You mentioned how you had a team listening for like the ticks in the voice, the noise in the background, another person checking on the language, another person dealing with the person. How can we be listening and understanding and picking these kind of, like things that can work to our advantage while we're on the phone? Is there something that we should be thinking as the call's going on? Should we have a wee checklist before we go to a negotiation? How would you start building, if somebody's wanting to be like a better sales caller, how would they go about it?
Well, yeah, what are you looking for? Sort of 2 things. combine two ideas. Vision drives decision. And the best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. So you're trying to get somebody to make a decision. Figure out how they made a similar decision in the past. Really high likelihood that's how they're going to make this decision. If you're in business, what's your relationship to them? Have they ever made this kind of a decision in the past with someone who bears a similar relationship between the two of you? Like, are they a brand new client, and how big of a deal is this decision? Did they ever make this decision with somebody they just met? Because if they're a brand new client, you don't have a pre-existing relationship with them. Some people will make that decision, some people won't. If they made it with someone they just met, what was their criteria? Well, I went to experts. What experts can I turn you on to? Because past behavior is going to drive future behavior. And so you use hostage negotiation skills to get in there to kind of figure out what's going on in their brain and to pull the information, how did this go in the past? Where did it fall down? What did you learn from it? Those are all questions that'll tell you how they made the decision in the past, what they think of that decision, which is now going to give you a great basis of predicting how they're going to move forward. So that in and of itself, just understanding vision drives decision and the best indicator of future behavior is past behavior, gives you a lot to work with.
I love how you fix people by dealing with the concepts around it, how it's built. You're not saying to people, here's the script, this is what you have to say, because it's maybe not going to fit the person's personality, it's going to come across as fake, etc. Like one of the simplest tips you gave in the book, which blew me away, was about like slowing down how I speak.
Yeah.
And I found that I was thinking, I kind of talk slowly, I talk clearly. And then I listened to myself on a few of my older podcasts, and when I got excited or I was like negotiating with somebody to come on, I was like supersonic speed, and I was putting like, I could sense the emotion. I could say, I was like, oh my, I really started pinpointing where I was going wrong.
Uh-huh.
It blew me away in that sense, And I notice it now, that how fast I'm talking. And I love that concept of just calm it down. I think you mentioned later in the book about letting time become your ally.
Right.
Like there's strict deadlines, but talk slowly. And could you go into a little thing about that? What are the kind of things we can use in a negotiation to our advantage, rather than the cost, the product, the bare essentials in that sense?
Well, tone of voice is a black belt's, a master practitioner's tool. It is such an overlooked aspect, which is awesome, because people think it's too basic to pay any attention to it and they overlook it. But, the downward inflection, that's a great voice to use when you really want the other side to know a certain point is not going to change. And what it does is it lets them hear it and feel rock solid about you, and they don't get backed into a corner. It keeps you from raising your voice and having to yell at them and tell them you're not going to change it, or threaten them if they try to change it. Our favorite one is whenever somebody tries to sneak a work for hire clause into one of our contracts, we don't do work for hire because it gives away our intellectual property. So we're just never going to do it. And if it comes up, I'll tell somebody on the phone or in person, I'll say, we don't do work for hire. Just like that. And they get this feeling that that's just not going to go away. And it's not. But now we don't got to argue about it. I don't threaten them. I don't give them false trade-offs. I don't back them into a corner. I make all these emotionally intelligent moves that I understand moves me, and it's to my advantage about 2 moves ahead. You don't want to think any farther than 2 moves ahead. But it gets me 2 moves ahead, and it leads me where I want to be, and there's no argument.
Because that's what blew me away was I realized, like, one of my other things I do, apart from running a great podcast, hopefully, is I work with students in university. And I was thinking that I was quite good with dealing with them, explaining, but sometimes they try to take advantage of your good nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I never
No,
noticed.
say it isn't so.
No, I noticed like how when you mentioned that about the downward and the upward like connotations you put on things, that I was maybe leaving things open to interpretation or another question, that I
Right.
wasn't being strict enough. And that's something I struggle with, was dealing with a situation where they've not done something and I've been the pal to them, but I need to tell them, no, there's no chance you're getting your visa sorted, or like, you have to go way back to your home country and get it sorted, or you have to do this. They kind of think, oh, well, because he's always been so nice. I struggle with that confrontational side of things, the standing up and being that strict kind of person when I've kind of maybe been a different kind of personality before. So how can people listening be better at confronting people, standing their ground? Is there language that we should be using? Is there a tone of voice? Because I noticed you mentioned about that tone, the authoritarian tone is not a good tone to use. So how should I adapt what I'm saying or the way I'm saying it to make sure that they get the point across, that they've got to bust and get their ass moving and get whatever it is that I'm asking for?
Yeah, there's a couple of tiny little touches you can usually put into something like, downward inflecting with a smile. It helps it land more softly. The softer your words land, the more likely they are to sink in, the more confident you appear. I can always tell when somebody is really insecure because they have to appear really confident and really right. And, really authoritarian. I mean, typically the more authoritarian somebody appears in their demeanor, the more ordering they are, the more insecure they are. I mean, they're horrified. And I've even said to people, are you so afraid that I won't do what you ask that you can't ask me nicely? Now, the way I said that was also very intentional just now, because it was mostly downward inflecting. I wanted to have a little bit of a smile, but at the very end I hesitated. Then I threw a little bit of an upward inflection at the end. I said, you can't say it nicely. And that upward inflection at the tail end helps it land without that landing being an explosion. I need my words to land in a way that doesn't make people feel backed into a corner. And then chances that they're going to comply then are very high.
I love that, because that's the problem, is when you are trying to be not confrontational, but when you're trying to be the dominant one, where you've got to get them to do something because of like government regulations or because some protocol the university has. It was almost like I was letting them either have an open it sounded like it was a question, or sometimes I would say it and I would come across as a bit of a dick, and they would go, geez, you didn't need to say it like that, and I didn't even mean to be like that. And that's what I liked about the book, where you were saying simple things like what a difference a smile makes.
Right.
But then you were talking about anchoring and mirroring, and there's something there for everybody, no matter what stage they're at. And that kind of section in the book alone made me better with my students, where I was kind of understanding where they were coming from and understanding where they're, like when they came in and maybe they were being like quite abrasive because of some emotional thing that was happening to them. And I was trying to explain it to other people, like how amazing your book is, because it actually identifies and shows the things that makes us not just better negotiators, but better people, better communicators. We understand each other, like the tactical empathy.
Right.
And that it blows me away that you deserve all the credit you're getting for this book, because it is simply amazing. What has been like the favorite part of writing the book? Was there something that you'd held on as a standard belief that when you started analyzing it for the book, that it really kind of changed your opinion on it? Or, has there been a client transformation that has been your absolute favorite when you hear it and you read it back now?
I don't know that there's anything that much changed my opinion on it. There's a few things we'd say differently. Like we have a section in the book about leverage. And when we collaborated on this book, my son and I really wrote the book My son helped so much. I mean, he should be listed as a co-author because he contributed so many thoughts and ideas. I had to hire him. Otherwise, he'd give me a hard time about the book. But then, we're talking with our co-author, Tal Ross. Tal's a genius business writer. And Tal says, you guys aren't talking about leverage here. And, I said, well, there's always leverage. So you just take an emotional intelligence approach. You don't worry about it. And he's like, no. It's you can't do that. Everybody thinks in terms of leverage. We got to put some leverage stuff in there. So we put some stuff in a book about normative leverage and relative leverage, and we tried to describe leverage as this non-stationary idea. Because the other problem with leverage is, I'm sitting the other night, people say, how do we get leverage? How do we get leverage? What you got to do in this negotiation is you got to get leverage on the other side. Well, they're talking about leverage as if it's a house. You build it and it's there. Or it's a building. Like it's something stable. It's not stable. And it doesn't really matter what leverage you have on somebody. What matters is what they think of the leverage you have on them. Which means you could have the leverage is supposed to be the ability to inflict harm. But if they don't care about that harm, you got no leverage. We learned that the hard way in hostage negotiation. Because we figured all we had to do was show up and threaten to kill people, and they come out. Put a SWAT team outside and say, come out and we'll kill you. Which is really what the SWAT team is there for. And people would say, kill me. Because they would decide that our leverage was no good. They'd discard it. So now, because of that, we don't talk about leverage anymore. We talk about influence. You're a smarter negotiator. You're a more effective negotiator when you focus on influence instead of leverage. And now when we talk about people, we talk about influence. We talk about what's durable influence, what's fleeting influence. How do you establish influence that lasts? How do you establish trust-based influence? And it lasts and it sticks around. And, the influence that doesn't last is you ask people a bunch of yes questions, you get them to say yes to stuff. That does not last. Your influence from yes lasts for as long as you're in the room. And the minute you step out the door, that influence is gone. So we really focus much more on influence now than leverage.
It's when I'm just thinking about like some of the chapters in the book. There's a chapter there about getting getting a raise in your salary. About there's a chapter there about how to deal with people like a bank robber. There's all these kind of amazing things. I mean, we've been talking for almost an hour around the book. We haven't even gone into like the kind of key components in it, the key concepts. So I definitely have to have you on again. Just the ability, the amount of stuff we can chat about communication is mind blowing. But what would you want somebody to take away from it, like from this interview, just listening to it? Apart from buying the book, obviously, and what would you want them to remember about communication, negotiation? After reading the book, what would you think are the key points that you'd want them to remember if they did only those things?
One description of negotiation is the art of letting the other side have your way. So, hear the other side out first. I mean, just experiment with that. Try it in your low-stakes conversations. Paraphrase them, summarize them, whatever you got to do to hear them completely out. And then just stop and wait for a few moments after you've heard them out. You're going to be shocked at the number of people that are going to turn around and give you exactly what you want once they've been heard out. And the number of your negotiations that you will solve that way. Am I telling you you're going to solve them all? No. What I'm telling you is you will solve enough of them that it will be more than worth your investment of time. And then the ones that you don't solve, you will have established such a great working relationship with the other side by hearing them out, that the chances that you're going to solve it in a way that you're really happy with are extremely high. So just experiment a little bit with what it takes to hear somebody out and see what kind of an impact that has on your outcomes.
Because that's something that was really great about the book, was the bit where you said about just listen to the other side. You don't need to agree. There's a difference between actually listening to them and actually just giving them, a chance to air what they believe in from their opinion. to actually believing the same thing as them. And I think that's a problem, is if you say to somebody, listen to the other side, they think you're meaning try, understand and empathize with them, where you learn a lot more by just listening to them. And I think that's a brilliant concept you've raised. But you've done a number of like amazing interviews, and we definitely got to go back on and really talk about more about the book. But what's a concept about the book that that you're really interested in that you've maybe not had a chance to explore? What's your favorite bit about the book or communication, or is there something that you've maybe missed that you really wished you'd included?
Now, it's nothing that I wish we would have concluded. There's things that we found out that are true that we didn't quite realize were true. One of them is the amount of opportunities that are out there that are fake opportunities are much, much higher than I ever imagined. And the fake opportunities that suck up your time are so frequent, that we talk a lot about, how do you find out early on whether or not there's a deal at all? And there's a saying in sales, it's not a sin to take a long time. It's not a sin to not get the deal. It's a sin to take a long time to not get the deal. So what are the deals that you're never going to get? What do those look like? And how do you sniff those out sooner and then get rid of them politely so that you can spend time on deals that you can make? I mean, we talk about that a lot these days.
Because it must be amazing the amount of emails you have from people selling you what maybe in their head is a good deal, but it's like the 5% team. It's the they're not even realizing how cheeky it is what they're offering you, but to them that's a good deal, and that's.
Now wait a minute. I got to stop you there because I've always sort of wondered about that term. I've been called cheeky a couple of times. So are you trying to tell me that wasn't a compliment?
What, the 5%?
No, you said, how cheeky it was for them to do that. I mean, I've been called cheeky a couple of times.
Oh no, well, it depends.
It depends. It's usually not that good, though, is it?
No, not really. You can have a girlfriend who calls you cheeky in a conversation. You're like, "Oh, you cheeky wee soul," or "You cheeky wee sod." Like,
that's a good thing. Huh?
But you can also have it cheeky as a negative thing. Now, I'm Scottish. Now, we're weird in that we can call. I don't know if you're okay with it, but we can use the word "cunt" as an offensive term, but we can also use it as like a pally term. It's almost like a term of endearment, and it's what a lot of people struggle with because we use language in a weird kind of way, and that was something I was meaning to go into, was about different cultures using different kinds of language. Does it matter that? Are you ever afraid that there might be a phrase that you're going to use that seems legitimate in negotiating skills, but is going to cause problems down the line? Or is there always a way that you can bring it back and, just mirroring their kind of language and allowing them to build the kind of language and terminology and the way they speak and using the body language, you let them start so you can mirror them? Do you ever worry about the way society's changing, like what do you call it, rhyming, slang, and all this kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, here's the way around that, because you're always going to make mistakes. That's the bottom line. You're going to make a mistake somewhere along the line. It's the accumulation of what's come up to that point as to how your mistake is accepted. So, universally, deference works with everybody. If you're deferential, if you're hearing the other side out, if you're genuinely respectful all the time, then they will forgive you for those mistakes. And you're going to make mistakes. It's impossible to be error-free. It's impossible to drop into another culture. Heck, we make mistakes with each other because we misread the situation. So if you stick to deference and respect and hearing people out, then you drop a word that in one language is just a routine joke and in another language is horrible, then they'll forgive you for it because it's the context of how you threw it out there. And people know you're going to make mistakes. They're going to forgive you as long as you're deferential and respectful.
I love that. You basically break down how to be a better person, how to communicate better, but you break down a lot of the people's natural like walls they're going to put up and say, "Oh, I could never do that." Why? Oh, you can't smile when you speak to somebody. Oh, right. That you
Yeah.
can't do that. You can't do that. What happens if I say something wrong? Well, like you've just explained, the book is amazing in that sense, and it's one of those, one of the few books lately. I mean, I get a lot of them to read for interviews and stuff that I've really got into. I had it on the Kindle, I had it on the phone app. That I was constantly like, I started utilizing it straight away, and it blew me away that I was just getting into it, and I could see results straight away. So the book is a must buy for people. But do you get to a point now where family members and like partners and stuff like that are going, "Oh yeah, stop mirroring me. Oh no, you're uncreating my terms, or you're creating an emotional state." Do they get to a point where they're calling you out on things because you're maybe used to these kind of things, or can
Well,
you
that's
ever?
an indicator of insecurity, and so what they're telling me is, for whatever reason, they're insecure, they're fearful, they're worried. And then, all right, so then I got to ask myself, all right, what am I doing? How are my actions and my words not lining up that's causing this insecurity? And some people are just insecure, and you give them the benefit of the doubt as much as you can, but they're insecure. They're like, all right, there's no way around this. You want to misinterpret me, allow me to be clear with where I'm going with this, and you're still going to have your guard up. You're telling me more about you than you're telling me about me. And, I like information, so it's going to help me know about what to expect from you.
Yeah, and it's something, if you're a bank robber or a partner, the last thing you want to do is give you information in in an argument, because it's just I got how much value there is in this book. It is absolutely phenomenal. But for those listening who want to come and work with you, connect you in social media and all these sort of things, how do they get in touch? How can they follow your latest projects and that sort of stuff? I've got to have you back on, but I know we're over the hour now, so I'm really wary of your time. But how can they keep in touch? Get a copy of the book, connect, take it from there.
Yeah, well, Amazon is going to remain the best source for the book. I mean, Amazon has the best prices. When I buy copies of the book, I buy them from Amazon. If I'm buying any less than 10 or less at a time, Amazon's going to give me the best price. So I get no interest in Amazon. I wish I owned their stock, but that's the best place to buy the book. Now, we got a newsletter. Now, the newsletter is the best way. It's a great supplement to the book. The newsletter is free. The old phrase a friend of mine used to use: if it's free, I'll take 3. And besides being free, here are the other 2 advantages to it. It's concise. Some newsletters you get, they're 10 different articles, and they're trying to be so comprehensive. You don't know what to read, so you don't read anything. We send you out one short, sweet, concise, actionable article each week. Tuesday morning is when it comes out. This week's article was how to negotiate your bills with your utility companies. We found a listing of utility companies that are flexible in negotiating their bills, typical percentages they drop in there. All the big utility companies, your utility provider or your cell phone provider is on that list. So that encourages you, and then it lay out a very specific strategy of how to approach them. So there's 2 ways to subscribe to the newsletter. If you're in the U.S., we got a text to sign up function. Text to the number 22828, and that number is 22828. Send a message, FBI empathy, all one word. Don't let your spell check put a space between FBI and empathy, which it will if you don't watch it. And so then you'll get a response back asking you for your email address. Now, if you're not in the U.S., just go to the website, blackswanltd.com. BLACK like the color, swan, SWAN like the bird, LTD like limited.com. You go on our website, go to our blog. That's the newsletter, The Negotiation Edge. All the back issues are there. You can scroll through them. You can find stuff to look at. The newsletter is a gateway to everything we do. We got a lot of free stuff out there. The stuff we have on YouTube is free. Again, it's a good price. We put out a lot of content for free. You will get a long way with the book and the newsletter by itself. You decide you really want to step into the big leagues, Then we got a bunch of online training. We got a number of different options for you. We do training across the U.S. and come to our in-day training session for some real immersion and negotiation. And, we'll help you up the level of your game.
I mean, I really cannot thank you enough for this. I know, I'm choked up with the cold not just now, but I've taken so much from this. The book is amazing. I generally cannot stop ranting about it and recommending it to people. Just if you're basically breathing, you're negotiating in some sense of the word. So
Exactly.
you need to get a copy of this book. Is there going to be a volume 2 coming out soon?
We're no closer to having another book come out than 2 years. We're going to sit down with our co-author, Tal Raz, this fall and talk about whether or not it's time to do another book. But if we agree to do a book, it's at least 2 years away. In the meantime, we're putting a lot of stuff out via our website. So come take a look at that.
Definitely, you're absolutely killing it. You're giving away amazing content. The book is phenomenal. The floor is open to yours. Is there any training sessions, projects coming up that you want to promote?
Yeah, well, we do these one-day training sessions across the country, and the most frequent description that we get from people who attend is life-changing. So subscribe to the newsletter, check the website for the training sessions, come to one of our sessions. They're expensive. So, what's it worth to you to change your life? Only you know.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to leave it just now. I need to get you back on. We'll hit the book into a deeper sense, but I just wanted to give just some of the teasers, some of the amazing concepts you have in the book, because just the framing, the mirroring, building the motion, speaking slower, smiling, these kind of things would change everybody's negotiating skills. But the deeper stuff, that's when it really gets into, that's when you become like Neo from the Matrix.
That's it for another week. Thanks for listening. Absorb it, practice it, use it. Until next time, keep trying to hit that next level in your life.